Welcome back to the Frisco RoughRiders Pregame Show, and on this Sunday, May 4th, I'm joined by Tom Kayser, Texas League President. And Tom, you're the author of a new book, the Texas League Baseball Almanac. Just for starters, Tom, tell us about your inspiration for the story. It sounds like it was something that progressed and grew over time.
It did. Years ago, I was bored on the road and decided to start doing some research at libraries, just looking. I think the first project was to try and find some missing dates on no-hitters that were unclear in our media guide. And then, over time, one thing led to another, and sometime in the early 2000s, I looked through every box score from 1889 to 1971 and just found loads of interesting things that either were noteworthy to put in the media guide or were just unusual events that we didn't know about. And this book is basically a this date in history, where you can look at May 10th and May 4th, for that matter, and look and see what interesting things happened through history, the history of the Texas League, and with a league that was founded in 1888. It's a pretty fertile field. It's, when they told us how many pages we had to fill, how many words, it's like I told my co-author, David King, I said, there's no way. How do we chop this down to something this size? We could probably have 3 volumes with all the stuff that I have. But basically, this whole thing started because I was basically bored on the road.
So perhaps a second and maybe even a third edition of the Texas League Baseball Almanac will be on the way. So you started accumulating all these stats and tidbits, but at what point did you actually realize, let's compile all of this into a book?
I've had that idea for 20 years. I mean, almost from the very beginning, it was like, there's something that we can do here. David King, who is the co-author and is the actual writer of all this, is a former beat writer for the San Antonio Express-News, and so he and I, our first book was '04, came out in '05, and it was a book of stories, about 18 stories, the best events that we thought, in the history. And after that, I told him, I said, at some point I want to do a this date. So it's been more on my mind since we put out our original book. And about 2 years ago, I finally got a hold and said, look, I'm going to get serious about finding a publisher, and we're going to do this. And within 6 months, we had a contract, and the publisher actually wanted us to put it out last November. And I said, are you crazy? That means I'm going to have to do all sorts of things during the season if they want us to hand it in by September. I said, there's no way. I can work on this in the off season. I can't really concentrate on it during the season. So, and furthermore, I said, why would we want to put it out in November? Let's put it out just before the baseball season. So they saw the wisdom of that, and it was published this year, out for the first time in the end of February, and David and I have been doing events ever since.
What were some roadblocks or adversarial elements that you may have run into along the way at any point in the process?
There really aren't. I'd say that maybe the hardest part is just deciding what to put in the book. I mean, one of the original documents that I gave to David was, hundreds of thousands of words. And then I gave him probably 12 legal pads of stuff I'd written that had not yet gotten into the computer. And then I gave him a file box of stuff that I hadn't even written about yet. And so he just took stuff and started, sorting through it. It was really what goes in when you have a limited number of pages that you can use. And then the second thing is trying to find photographs that are of a quality you can use and that would be interesting enough that meld in with the stuff that's in the book. And I'm proud that we've got, there are probably about 100 pictures in there, ranging from people like Tris Speaker and Dizzy Dean and Hank Greenberg and Rogers Hornsby, all Hall of Famers, all huge names in the history of baseball, right on down to people that nobody would ever know. But there's their picture because they may have done something really special in the Texas League at some point in their career.
Has this an almanac? Has anything like this been done for other baseball leagues in the minors?
Well, I don't know about the minors, but I have a number of this date formats. I mean, the first ones I saw were by a fella that I knew years ago when I was working for the Pirates, and he did, a this date in Texas or in Pittsburgh Pirates history and a this date in Cleveland Indians history. One of the broadcasters for the Houston Astros did something called a Stitch in Baseball Time, and it was basically a this date concentrating on the Houston Astros, but more broadly, filling in with major league stuff. So this isn't a new format, but certainly it's one that had never been done for the Texas League, and we've been blessed that there have been a number of people before me who had done voluminous research or have written books on the Texas League that without them, Bill O'Neill, East Texas, Bill Ruggles, who was the statistician of the Texas League from 1919 to 1964.
It's quite a
Think
tenure.
about that. And he was a sports editor of the Dallas Morning News while he was doing that. So without that foundation, I never would have been able to do half of what I've done historically. Or, you've seen our media guide, the same thing. We probably have a more complete media guide, more information than any league out there. And again, I'm blessed because of what I had to begin with, and then I've filled in stuff that I've discovered over the last 20 years.
Thanks for tuning in to part one of our interview with Texas League President Tom Kayser, author of a new book, the Texas League Baseball Almanac. Be sure to tune in to the Frisco RoughRiders Pregame Show tomorrow for the second half of the interview. We're back after this on the RoughRiders Baseball Network.